Hi, everyone. This is Christen Priddie with the National Survey of Student Engagement, and I'll be walking you through the Campus Action Plan for the Career and Workforce Preparation Topical Module tutorial. So for some context about the Career and Workforce Topical Module, it came out of some growing concerns for students' preparation for the workforce, and so really thinking about interest in students' career plans, perceptions, how do they utilize different services on campus that are in service to or supporting of career services, and thinking about how aligned expectations at the institution are with the goals of the workforce and preparing students through their undergraduate experiences. And so the topical module was developed in partnership with the Strata Education Network on the module development. And here's this little screenshot of the module so you can get a glimpse of what that looks like. So you may be wondering the starting point for exploring, understanding, thinking about your career and workforce preparation module, and in terms of really thinking about how you can utilize that data and results to inform change on your campus. So you may be thinking about how you have unexplored CWP data and results that you've collected from a couple years ago to maybe last year, and wanting to understand how to get into exploring those results. You may also be unclear about where to begin. So maybe you have results, maybe you haven't collected CWP data, but you're wanting to get engaged in it. This is also a really good starting place for this tutorial. You also may be unsure about who to get involved. And so you may be thinking, well, I know career services should be involved, but should advisors be involved? Should different organizations, companies that we work with in terms of career fairs and workshops be involved? So this may also start helping prompt you to think about who should be involved in this process. And lastly, maybe broadly, we're thinking about how undecided you are on the institutional impact of the career and workforce preparation module on your institution's goals and missions and commitments. And so we're here to think through about how to utilize your career and workforce preparation module and move it into action in terms of really informing change at your institution. So we prepared a step-by-step CWP journey, which will shorten career workforce preparation, entitled it CWP, to really think about how you start to, again, utilize your CWP data, results, planning, preparation, in order to really capture, again, how to utilize this data on your campus. So what we'll start off today with this tutorial is thinking about your campus action planning. So how do we get started and going through that process? And then the other tutorials that are also on this website are thinking about how you're exploring your data and results, and some tips and tricks and resources to go about that. Then also turning your plan into action. So don't want to just stay in the planning phase. We want to make sure that that planning thing's turning into actual action that you're doing. And those tutorial and that resource will also guide you through that as well. So we've created a worksheet entitled Campus Action Plan, which you should find on this website, where we're really going through the idea of how we plan, prepare, take action, and reflect on the career and workforce preparation module. And we have some guiding questions on how to prompt you to think about different areas and aspects of these four areas that you will work with you through. So this tutorial is really working through and giving some context for each of the steps that you will take using this worksheet, which again can be found on this website. So the first step is plan. And so really, as we're thinking about if we're unsure of where to begin or we haven't explored anything, we want to create a plan to make sure that we're following a really systemic step in order to make sure that we're guided properly into how we want to implement this information into our institution. So the first thing is to think about goal exploration. So oftentimes institutions may administer modules or pick data sources or surveys that they're not necessarily sure what the intention or the goal or the larger mission is. And so they want to kind of pare down a little bit and understand what are the main interests, motivations, and goals for administering this specific module on your campus. And you may also kind of get some insights from strategic plans, initiatives, accreditation processes, et cetera, to really understand, does this fit within our ethos or our mission in terms of what we're trying to accomplish on this campus? The next step would be to identify key stakeholders. And so this is also a really key step of, well, with whom should your CWP data and results be shared? And we'll get to more of this a little bit later. The last thing we think about is preliminary data exploration. So this is not necessarily getting into the data, getting into the files, but this is more so, thinking about the module items and what items may align with the goals or interest or initiatives that have already been put in place. And you may also think about different identities that have our interest. So are there any social identities, maybe class year, participation kind of identification markers that could be helpful to really understanding, again, how students are engaging in their career preparation on your campus. So we have some relevant resources for this planning stage. First, we have an administration timeline on our website where you can go through and kind of get a sense of each month what is happening in the NSSE administration process and where you all need to take action. We also have a campus-wide mapping tool where you can look at every item on the core NSSE, which is the items that everyone gets, as well as the modules to see what items may map onto different organizations, entities, offices on your campus to see what items may be helpful or results may be helpful for that campus organization office to be useful to really understand how they can utilize that information. We also have data code books for every module. So we have the career and workforce preparation data code book that you can utilize to understand what items are being asked of the students to be able to, again, start to plan and prepare for what that looks like. And last, we have an accreditation toolkit, which it can help you think through if one of your goals, your goal exploration comes out that we really want to use this for accreditation purposes. We have some crosswalks where you can identify the standards for accreditation and how that matches on and maps onto some of the NSSE resources. So the next step is really to prepare. And so this is where you want to prepare your people, your team, your processes, your access to things to ensure that everyone is ready for the action that you're going to take. So the first step is really thinking about preparing for data and results. And so this is where you can think about the raw preliminary files that you get. So usually you'll get raw and preliminary data files starting around end of April, early May. And so you can start actually preparing some of your analysis techniques or tips or tricks and utilize some resources to really prepare for that final data file that you get towards the end or middle of August. But also thinking about what data is most useful for stakeholders. And so once you've already identified your stakeholders, let's say you have 10 stakeholders or entities or small groups you want to share that data with, then you can start to look at the preliminary files or look at the data code books and identify what questions, item sets, groups of items can be sent out to those different stakeholders. And again, this is not necessarily doing it, it's just making sure you're prepared to understand where everything needs to go. This is also where you want to prepare for data exploration. So again, this is not necessarily doing the data exploration, but this is more so making you have sure you have all of your ducks in a row to be able to enact that process. And so this is where you can think about data use teams or data analysis teams. Who is involved in data analysis? Is it just one person? Is it the institutional research office? Is there other entities on campus that can be involved in that process? Also thinking about timelines. What timeline is the best for you to reach the goals that you've identified in the planning stage? And what process do you need to enact in order to get there? And again, who needs to be involved in that process at each step? And again, you may also connect other NSSE items to CWP data to really think about how the career workforce preparation items and questions and concepts really match maybe some high impact practices or engagement indicators that can really kind of get you to crosswalk and utilize again this across your institution to figure out what may be best to act on or use to enact institutional transformation. So again, we have some relevant resources for the prepare stage as well. There's some information on the raw data downloads. If you're unfamiliar with how we prepare our raw data for, it's a kind of a pre-data that you get before the finalized data. There's some information there. If you're also thinking about how to be more inclusive in your data analysis, we have a whole guide on how to be inclusive and some data analysis tips. We also have syntax guides. So if you're wanting to do some calculations or essentially recreate the final data file before you get the data file, we have some guides that can help you prepare for how we calculate different items and opportunities and concepts. And then lastly, a brief guide on how to create data use teams. So if you've never heard of a data use team or unfamiliar how to get started on your campus, we have a little bit of information on that as well. So then this step is really about taking action. And so this is where all of that planning, that preparation that you've done is supposed to lead you up into really gearing up to make sure that you can take that action. And so what you'll see on the left is a screenshot of the report that you would get as a part of your participation in the module, adding on that to your administration. And so you want to take action in two ways. Data exploration. So again, making sure you solidify data access. Does everyone who needs access to the data based off of the plan and preparation you've done have access to that? Is everyone clear on the timelines that you set in order to make sure that, again, you can enact these changes that you've set forth? And then also start exploring the CWP data based on our exploration checklist. So in the worksheet, we have a few options of if you're unfamiliar, or confused, or unsure of how to get started on our exploration, we have a few little options for ways to get started. And that, of course, probably leads you to another bunch of other questions, conversations that can happen, but those are some really good places to get started. And on the other end, we want to think about results dissemination. So again, you get this report in your data and your reports that you receive in August, but this may not be accessible or applicable to everyone who reads it. So you may want to think about what are the most appropriate formats to deliver data and results to different stakeholders. So some may, love to have this report in the way that it comes, but some may want to have this in a simplified one pager. Some may want to have a long form kind of report. So thinking of the ways that you can disseminate that, and again, that should kind of happen in the planning and preparation phase. And this is where you meet with the stakeholders. So you've identified the stakeholders, you're kind of prepared for what to deliver to them and how that conversation will go. So this is where the meeting actually happens, to discuss the results, discuss how their um, office or entity really relates to the results, understands the results, can complicate the results, and then collect feedback on what can be done, and how their office or entity can really contribute to the conversation about the data and results that were just received. And then lastly, but certainly not least, we want to be reflective about how both the survey administration process went, but also how the action planning process went. Oftentimes, we're caught up in the cycle of every administration year or every academic year or every academic semester or quarter. And so it can be difficult to take a little break to stop and reflect on some different areas about this process. And so we're intentionally crafting this action planning process to include reflection so that way you don't miss this step. And so some areas that you can reflect on are pride points, right? What went well throughout the both administration process, action planning process? What were some lessons learned? What are ways that you may want to improve the process as you move forward in the implementation of your results in transformation of institution based on career preparation for students? What are some ways you may want to move forward? Do you want to administer this again? So you may also consider whether or not you have enough information that you need in order to move ahead, or you need to collect some more information and try a different recruitment strategy or different promotion strategy in order to kind of think through how your next administration can be different than this one. And that's okay, but this is what this reflection process can help bring out. And lastly, you may think about your stakeholders. So were your stakeholders appropriate based off of the conversations you had? Did they provide the information that was helpful for you to build off of in order to really, again, create this process and substantiate this process in order to move forward? So you may also be thinking about, well, how does all of this get done and kind of what timeline? So we offer a bit of a suggested timeline based off the NSSE administration timeline and the campus action plan progression that we just went through. But please, based off of your self-guided journey through this tutorial and through these workshops, really use a timeline that works best for your goals. And so if your goal is to get all of this done in 3 months, feel free to go ahead, write that. But some folks want to kind of follow maybe the more NSSE administration timeline to figure out how this fits. And so we offer some options here. And so we have some different points in time throughout the academic year, really July, October, April, and August. And so we'll kind of hit some points and see where our action plan can be implemented. And so around July, our registration opens. So that's where you can register and let you know that you want to participate in the next administration. But before that registration or around that registration, you'll want to have planned, right? Because we don't want to administer modules or minister data or surveys that we're not sure of what we're going to do with the information once we receive it. And so this is where you can really implement that planning stage to understand that we already have a set goal, motivation, interest, understanding of why we're doing the career workforce preparation module. And therefore, we know when we move forward, this is kind of be how we move forward. So then you may want to start that planning to help gear you up for wanting to register for NSSE. So then we also have in October, that's around more customization. So that's where you can select your topical module, select your recruitment strategy, think about promotion materials. And so this is kind of the preparation phase because after you've selected your options for customization, you'll know exactly what the administration should look like. And so therefore, you can plan and prepare for all of those stages because you have a better sense of what that customization look like. And so hopefully you'll select the career workforce preparation module if you haven't already, and therefore you can start working through that stage of the action planning process. So then between February and May is when usually institutions decide to deliver their administration to their students. And so through this time, there's a couple things that happen. In April, we usually deliver our raw data files. And so again, that's unclean data that you can get, but you can work through our guides, our syntax guides, our data code books to really understand what that data means. But that may be a good starting place to start taking action. And taking action meaning, again, looking at the data, doing the data explorations, making sure access is key, working on how to disseminate, meeting with those institution stakeholders. And that may all go all the way up through August when you actually receive your institutional reports and your finalized data files. And so once you receive that, and then action process may be taking shape, where you've already kind of prepped and so you already know what analysis you want to do, probably maybe in May. So therefore when you get that final data file, it's not questioning of what we're going to do and what's helpful. You've already gone through this entire process where you already understand what's helpful, what's useful, who needs it. So therefore once you have your final data files and reports, all of that stuff is already set. So therefore once that happens, everything's just a go, and you can kind of get that set up. And then lastly, there's no set timeline on when this should happen, but then you'll want to do the reflection stage. And that's again, whenever your timeline or what your goals tell you that your timeline, your action phase is over, you want to go in and to make sure you're reflecting and sense making about the process. And again, making sure you're following up with that process to understand how you can move forward and what you may want to do again for the next process moving forward. So really getting started, again, this is the beginning of the process of thinking through and working through your campus action plan for the career and workforce preparation module. So really use that worksheet that is a part of this tutorial to really guide your process, but also can track your progress. And don't think you have to work through all of the questions in one sitting. You can work through the question, some questions with one group of people, work through the questions with another group of people. So this is supposed to be a collaborative, collective process because again, all the students at institutions are really impacted by the idea conversations about career interests and career preparation. So again, getting those stakeholders involved in this process is really critical. And then after this tutorial, there are two other tutorials that are really going to be helpful and key to really wrap up this intentional process we've created about how to guide you through your career work preparation module. So make sure you follow the other two steps beyond this journey. Then lastly, utilize NSSE resources to supplement your progress. And so again, I've listed out some resources here. We have a ton more resources on our website that really can guide you and shape the way that you want to make this process work for you at your institution. And last but not least, reach out to us for questions. We're happy to offer any support, guidance, consultations. If you're stuck on a stage, if you really don't know where to begin and this hasn't given you the detailed steps for your institution on how to move forward, please reach out to us and let us know how we can be supportive in your process. So with that, I thank you all for listening, and I hope you all enjoy our career and workforce preparation tutorial series.